I looked at my phone, whose screen was illuminated by an incoming call from Ethan, while the conference room hummed with soft discussions. Anticipating the customary light conversation, perhaps a friendly, "How's the trip?" and "When will you be home?" I put the phone to my ear as I entered the hallway. However, I could tell something was wrong as soon as I heard his voice. Ethan remarked, "I'm divorcing you," in a chilly, even arrogant tone. "Oh, and I've already sold the apartment, so you'll need to figure out where you're going to live." For a moment, I was unable to breathe. It was almost comical, the boldness, the total lack of regret. As his words sunk in, I gripped the phone tighter. I said in a firm voice, "You sold the apartment?" "Yeah," he said with a wry laugh. "In order to begin our life together, Emily and I need the money. In any case, she deserves more than that small space." Emily. The name hurt. Due to Ethan's late hours, sporadic business travels, and our increasing separation, I had been suspecting for months that someone else was involved. However, it made my chest burn to hear him use her name so nonchalantly, as though I were the stranger in my own life. "Sounds good," I said calmly, not giving him the response he desired. "I'm Olivia, and I believed I was married to a trustworthy man until that phone call." I had been dating Ethan for 6 years. Our dream, a representation of everything we had created together, had been our apartment, a comfortable 2-bedroom in the center of the city. I had thought so. In retrospect, the warning flags had always been there: his contempt for me when I mentioned money, the way he dismissed my worries with a brief kiss and a dazzling grin. I had thought that his self-assurance stemmed from his expertise. I now understood that it was because he knew he could control me. Ethan was unaware of one thing, though. Legally, I owned the flat he believed he had sold. I got the deed changed to my name only when we refinanced a few months back. Too focused on cutting our interest rate to pay attention to the specifics, Ethan had signed off without a second look. His negligence was going to be his undoing. The astonishment had changed into something else by the time I got back to my hotel room that night. Resolve. I had no intention of crying. I had no intention of begging. Ethan was going to get into a fight if he wanted one. And I was going to prevail this time. I called my old friend and lawyer, Julia, first. She repeated incredulously, "He sold the apartment? Does he even realize he can't do that without your consent?" "Apparently not," I said with a tinge of humor. "He thinks he's already spent the money on his new life with Emily." Julia gave a dry laugh. "He's going to have a rough awakening, I guess. The transaction is void. You are the only owner. He is liable for fraud if he stole money from the buyer." The word sent a jolt of satisfaction through me. What do we need to do first? We notify the buyer, then we send Ethan a formal letter outlining the consequences of his actions. If he tries anything else, we take him to court. As I hung up, a strange sense of calm settled over me. Ethan thought he had outsmarted me, that he had left me scrambling. But in reality, he had just set himself up for humiliation. The flight home gave me hours to think. Ethan's arrogance was astounding. He hadn't even tried to hide his betrayal, as if I was just another obstacle in his way. But instead of dwelling on anger, I focused on what I would do next. The moment I landed, I called Julia. "I'm back. What's the next step?" "We've already contacted the buyer," she said, her tone brisk and efficient. They were furious. They're willing to cooperate. "And Ethan. I sent him the formal letter this morning," she said. "I imagine he's going to be furious." "Good. Let him stew." That evening, Ethan stormed into the apartment, his face red with anger. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, waving the letter in his hand. "You're telling me I can't sell the apartment? It's half mine." "No, Ethan," I said, crossing my arms. "It's not. The deed has been in my name for months." He froze, his face a mixture of confusion and rage. "What are you talking about?" I grabbed the deed from the file I had pulled earlier, holding it up. "After we refinanced, I had the deed transferred to my name. You signed off on it. Or did you just skim the paperwork like always?" For a moment, he said nothing. Then his expression twisted into a sneer. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" I stared at him unblinking. "The sale is already void, Ethan. The buyer knows it, and they're ready to take legal action. Oh, and if you spent any of that deposit, you're in even bigger trouble. His confidence wavered for the first time. You don't know what you're talking about, he muttered. Oh, I do. I took a step closer. You spent years treating me like I was too naive to notice what you were doing. But guess what? I've been paying attention. His frustration mounted. This is ridiculous. You can't just kick me out. I raised an eyebrow. Actually, I can. Over the next few days, his anger turned into desperation. He left frantic voicemails, some begging, some threatening. Meanwhile, Julia ensured every legal loose end was tied up. One night, he had the audacity to bring Emily to the apartment. So this is where we're staying, she asked smugly. I smiled. No, this is where Ethan was staying. You, Emily, won't be staying here at all. Her smile faltered. Ethan looked like he was about to explode. You can't do this, he shouted. This isn't your home, Ethan, I said. And it never will be again. Emily's expression turned icy as she turned on him. You told me this was your apartment, that you sold it. It's complicated, he stammered. It's not, I said. He committed fraud, and now you get to deal with that. Emily stepped away from him. You're unbelievable. Without another word, she stormed out. Ethan turned to me, desperation in his eyes. Olivia, please. I handed him a folder. This is the divorce paperwork. Sign it. He stared at it, pale. You really hate me that much? I let out a bitter laugh. No, Ethan. I don't hate you. I feel sorry for you. And with that, I closed the door behind him. For the first time in years, I finally felt free. I sat alone in my hotel room, staring at the city lights outside the window. Ethan's voice still echoed in my head, his smug declaration replaying like a cruel joke. I'm divorcing you. I sold the apartment. You'll need to figure out where to live. The betrayal stung, but what cut deeper was the realization that I had seen this coming. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. Ethan had always dismissed me when I asked about our finances, brushing me off with charming reassurances whenever I'd question his spending or brought up our future plans. He laughed, called me paranoid, and changed the subject. Over time, I had convinced myself that his confidence meant security, that he knew what he was doing. Now, I knew better. I thought back to the moment earlier this year when I had refinanced the apartment. At the time, Ethan had been too busy focusing on the lower interest rate to bother reading the fine print. He hadn't even asked why the deed was being transferred solely to my name. He had just signed, careless, overconfident. The very qualities that had allowed him to manipulate me were about to be his downfall. I refused to let him turn me into a victim. Reaching for my phone, I dialed Julia's number. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, Liv. How's the trip? I let out a slow breath. Ethan just called. He says he's divorcing me, and he claims he sold the apartment. There was silence for a beat. Then he what? I repeated it, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Julia's tone sharpened. He does realize he can't sell something that isn't his, right? Apparently not. She let out a short, incredulous laugh. Well, he's in for a nasty surprise. The sale is void, Liv. He has no legal ground here. If he's already taken money from the buyer, he could be looking at fraud charges. A slow, cold satisfaction settled over me. What do we do next? First, we notify the buyer and let them know the sale isn't legal. Then we send Ethan a formal letter outlining the consequences of his actions. She paused. If he's dumb enough to push back, we take him to court. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Good, I said. Let's make sure he knows exactly what he's dealing with. Julia's voice held a hint of amusement. Oh, he's going to regret every decision he's made this year. As I hung up, a sense of clarity settled over me. Ethan had thought he was leaving me powerless, that I would crumble, beg, or lash out in desperation. But he had underestimated me. This wasn't just about a marriage ending. It was about taking back everything he had tried to strip away from me, my home, my stability, my dignity, and I was going to make sure he paid for every last bit of it. The rest of my business trip passed in a blur. I attended meetings, nodded at the right moments, and delivered presentations as if nothing had changed. But beneath the surface, my mind was razor-sharp, focused on the battle ahead. I refused to let Ethan take anything more from me, not my home, not my dignity, and certainly not my peace. By the time my plane landed, I was more than ready. The first call I made was to Julia. "I'm back," I said, wheeling my suitcase toward the terminal exit. "What's the latest?" Her tone was crisp, efficient. "We've notified the buyer." They were furious, rightfully so. "They're willing to cooperate, which strengthens our case." She hesitated. Ethan, on the other hand, well, let's just say he's in for a wake-up call. A cold smile touched my lips. Perfect. When I arrived at the apartment, the silence was unsettling. Ethan's things were still there, his jacket draped over a chair, his shoes kicked off carelessly by the door, his coffee mug still sitting on the counter like he'd just been there that morning. Even in his absence, his presence lingered. I set my suitcase down, inhaling deeply. This was my home, and I would not let him take that from me. Hours later, Ethan came storming through the door, his face red with fury, a crumpled letter in his hand. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, shaking the paper in my direction. "You're telling me I can't sell the apartment? It's half mine." I folded my arms, unbothered. "No, Ethan, it's not." His eyes narrowed. "You're lying." I turned, walking to the side table where I had placed a folder earlier that evening. Pulling out the deed, I held it up. "You remember when we refinanced?" I asked, voice calm and measured. "You signed the paperwork without even reading it." The deed was transferred to my name months ago. Ethan froze. His eyes flickered from the document to me, then back again. "No," he muttered. His arrogance cracked, giving way to something else, panic. "Check for yourself," I said, placing the deed on the counter. He hesitated before snatching it up, scanning the pages with frantic eyes. His breathing grew heavier with each line he read, his hands tightening around the edges of the paper. This is impossible," he stammered. "You tricked me." I let out a quiet laugh. "No, Ethan, you just never paid attention." The weight of his mistake hit him in real time. His shoulders slumped, his confidence crumbling as reality set in. He had thought he could manipulate me, blindside me, and walk away untouched. Instead, he had walked himself straight into a disaster, and now he had to deal with the consequences. Ethan's grip on the deed tightened as he scanned the pages again, as if willing the words to change. His jaw clenched, his confidence slipping away. But instead of admitting defeat, he shifted tactics. "You're really going to do this?" His voice dropped into something softer, something calculated. "You're just going to throw away 6 years like they meant nothing?" I didn't flinch. "You threw them away the second you betrayed me." He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "Wow, so this is who you really are, cold, heartless. I gave you everything, Olivia, and this is how you repay me." I arched an eyebrow. "You gave me everything?" I gestured around the apartment, the home I secured, the finances I managed, the life I held together while you lied and schemed behind my back. Ethan opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. "You don't have a leg to stand on, Ethan," I continued. "The buyer has already rescinded the deal, and if you've spent any of that money, you've got bigger problems than me." His eyes darkened, his bravado cracking further. "That's not." "Oh, and before you try to play the victim," I cut in, my voice unwavering, "let me remind you that you called me. You thought you could throw me out of my own home and walk away scot-free. But guess what? You failed." The silence between us stretched, heavy and charged. Then, like a switch flipping, Ethan's demeanor changed. His lips curled into a smirk. "You know, Liv," he said, stepping closer, lowering his voice, "you're not as smart as you think you are." "Here we go," I said. "Don't forget," he continued, "I know you. I know how you think. I know what makes you tick, and I know you don't have it in you to see this through." I tilted my head, unimpressed. "Is that so?" He nodded, confidence creeping back into his expression. "You've always been too emotional, too sentimental. Eventually, you'll crack. You'll second-guess yourself, and when you do, I'll be waiting." A slow smile spread across my lips. "You're wrong, Ethan," I said simply. And for the first time, I saw it, the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. I leaned in slightly. You don't know me as well as you think you do. His smirk faltered just a little. A buzzing sound interrupted the standoff, my phone vibrating on the counter. I glanced at the screen. Julia. I answered on speaker. You're on. Just wanted to update you. Julia's voice came through brisk and professional. Everything is in motion. Divorce paperwork is being finalized and Tyler, oh, sorry. Ethan has no legal grounds to fight anything. I watched as Ethan's face paled at the mention of his real predicament. Julia continued, and if he spent any of the deposit, well, let's just say the fraud charges will be hard to dodge. I crossed my arms. Anything else? Just one more thing, Julia added, her voice tinged with amusement. He should probably start looking for somewhere else to live immediately. Ethan's fingers twitched around the deed, his breathing shallow, his mind clearly racing. I hung up. For a long moment, he just stood there. Then he did what he always did, he tried another angle. You can't do this to me, he said, this time his voice edged with desperation. Liv, please, we can work something out. I shook my head. No, we can't. His desperation sharpened. You're ruining my life. I laughed, a small, bitter sound. You did that all on your own. For the next few days, Ethan spiraled. My phone flooded with voicemails, each one an emotional roller coaster. One moment he was apologizing, swearing he'd made a mistake, telling me he still loved me. The next, he was cursing me, threatening that I'd regret this, that I was destroying everything for no reason. I didn't respond. I had no reason to. Instead, I focused on reclaiming my life. And for the first time in years, I felt in control. The knock on the door came just as I was reviewing some paperwork at the dining table. I knew who it was before I even opened it, Ethan. But what I wasn't expecting was her. Nicole stood beside him, arm looped through his, a smug smile plastered across her face as if she already owned the place. So, this is where we'll be staying, she mused, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Her eyes roamed over the apartment, assessing it like she had just acquired a new prize. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. No, I said coolly. This is where Ethan was staying. You won't be staying here at all. Nicole's smile faltered. She looked between me and Ethan, confusion flashing across her perfectly made-up face. Wait, what? Ethan's jaw tightened. Liv, don't start this. Oh, I'm not starting anything, I interrupted. I'm just stating facts. I turned to Nicole, meeting her gaze head-on. Ethan doesn't own this apartment. I do. It's been in my name for months. Her brows furrowed, and she let out a short, disbelieving laugh. That's not true. Ethan sold this place. I smirked. Oh, did he? That's interesting because the sale was void before it even started. Ethan never had the right to sell it in the first place. Nicole's eyes darted to Ethan, looking for reassurance. Tell me she's lying. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. It's complicated. Nicole's grip on his arm loosened. Complicated? Her tone sharpened. You told me this was your apartment, that you sold it, that we'd have the money to start fresh. I watched as the realization settled in. He had lied to her too. Nicole took a step back. Oh my God, she whispered, her face contorting in disbelief. You don't have the money, do you? Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his frustration mounting. Nicole, listen. No, she snapped. You said this was handled, that we had nothing to worry about. Were you seriously planning to just move in here without telling me you had no claim to this place? Ethan gritted his teeth. We would have figured something out. Nicole let out a bitter laugh. Unbelievable. I folded my arms, enjoying the show. Oh, trust me, it gets better. Nicole turned to me, eyes blazing. You knew, didn't you? That this would happen. I shrugged. I knew Ethan would try to pull something stupid. I just didn't think he'd be dumb enough to drag you into it too. Her face burned with embarrassment, her fury now fully directed at Ethan. You lied to me. Nicole, calm down. Calm down. She threw her hands up. You ruined me. I left everything because you said we had a future together. But you don't even have a place to live. Ethan reached for her, but she jerked away. I cannot believe I fell for this. And then, without another word, She grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Ethan stood frozen, staring at the door as if willing her to come back. I exhaled slowly, relishing the silence. Well, that was brutal. He turned to me, eyes dark with rage, but there was something else there too, humiliation. You set me up, he accused. I laughed. No, Ethan, you set yourself up. For the first time, he had nothing left to say. No smug remarks, no last-ditch attempts to manipulate me, just a man standing in the ruins of his own arrogance. And I had never felt more victorious. Ethan stood there, shoulders slumped, staring at the floor like a man who had finally realized he had nothing left to fight for. Nicole was gone, his scheme had collapsed, and now he was standing in an apartment that no longer belonged to him, if it ever truly had. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I walked to the counter, picked up a folder, and placed it on the table between us. The divorce papers, I said, my voice steady. It's over, Ethan. There's nothing left to discuss. His eyes flickered to the folder, then back to me. Liv, his voice was softer now, almost pleading. We don't have to do this like this. I raised an eyebrow. Oh! And how exactly do you think we should do this? He exhaled sharply, dragging a hand down his face. I screwed up, I know that. But we've been together for years. Doesn't that mean something? I let out a short, humorless laugh. You mean the same years you were lying to me, manipulating me, planning a life with someone else behind my back? Ethan opened his mouth, but I didn't give him the chance. No, I continued. It doesn't mean anything. Not anymore. His hands curled into fists at his sides. You really hate me that much? I met his gaze unflinching. I don't hate you, Ethan. I pity you. He flinched. Out of all the things I could have said, that one seemed to cut the deepest. With nothing left to say, Ethan finally accepted his defeat. Wordlessly, he grabbed the folder, flipped it open, and signed his name on the divorce papers. The moment his pen left the page, I felt it, the weight lifting. His final tie to me had been severed. Ethan closed the folder and let out a slow, defeated breath. I'll pack my things. I nodded, stepping aside as he moved through the apartment, gathering the remnants of his life, his clothes, his shoes, the framed photos he hadn't even bothered to take down before he moved. He moved methodically, but I could see it, the way his hands trembled, the way his shoulders hunched, as if the full weight of his mistakes had finally settled on him. He had walked in here thinking he held all the power. Now he was leaving with nothing. Minutes passed in silence. When he was finally finished, he stood at the door, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He looked back at me one last time. This isn't how I thought things would end, he admitted. I tilted my head. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you tried to destroy me. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He just nodded stiffly, turned, and walked out. I didn't watch him go. Instead, I closed the door behind him, locked it, and reached into my pocket, pulling out a fresh set of keys. Within minutes, I had changed the locks, sealing him out of my life for good. At last, the flat was legally, physically, and emotionally my again. I felt tranquility, something I hadn't felt in years, when I stood in the center of my house for the first time. It wasn't a lonely stillness. It wasn't deserted. It felt liberating. With a bottle of wine in hand and a fresh chapter ahead of me, I allowed myself to grin as I cuddled up on the couch that evening. Because I had my life back for the first time in a long time. It felt lighter in the apartment. Now that Ethan was gone, it was mine once more. I started by restoring the place, room by room and piece by piece. I changed the decor, relocated the furniture, and got rid of any traces of him. The enormous gaming chair that he had demanded to keep? Lost. The jerseys that were framed and hung on the walls? Packed away. The coffee table he had adored, but was goddamn awful? Swapped out for something I genuinely like. Redecorating wasn't the only thing involved. Erasing his impact and existence was the goal. I wanted this place to feel like home since it was now my home. That weekend, Lauren and Julia arrived with a bottle of champagne and takeout. Lauren raised her glass and said, "To new beginnings." Julia grinned and continued, to never let a man walk all over you again. I felt happiness, something I hadn't felt in a long time, as I clinked my glass against theirs. I was finally able to breathe without the burden of Ethan's conceit, deceit, and persistent rejection of me for the first time in years. He had been making me feel insignificant and as though I wasn't listening for years. However, his negligence ultimately lost him everything. And I was on my way now. Naturally, he made a few feeble attempts to get in touch with me, sending me texts that ranged from pathetic attempts at nostalgia to pathetic apologies. Liv, I miss you. Didn't we have a nice time? At least let's speak. I never answered. The divorce proceeded without any problems. Ethan no longer had the stamina to fight me. He lacked authority, money, and leverage. And me? I had it everything. I saw a picture of us one evening while going through old boxes. It was from years ago, when we were still happy, or at least I thought we were. I waited for the melancholy to set in while I gazed at it. However, it never did. Rather, I was relieved. This provided closure. I placed the picture at the back of a drawer after tucking it into an envelope. I missed him, therefore I wasn't keeping it. It served as a reminder to me. A reminder that I had made it through everything. A few weeks later, I was standing on my balcony, gazing out over the city while sipping a glass of wine. I knew I wouldn't be here long, but I had battled for this house. I would eventually relocate somewhere else that wasn't connected to Ethan, one I picked up for myself. But this was plenty for the moment. I lifted my glass to freedom, the city below, the night sky, and the woman I had grown into. I said, to freedom, and I felt it for the first time in a long time.